Okay, what I'm about to read to you is the last 2 pages of the book called The Two Babylons by Catholic clergy, Alexander Hislop. I believe this is his 4th edition or revised edition. Okay, so you can go get this book yourself. It's a great read. They talk about a whole bunch of ancient symbols and names that were talked about and that finally came out into the modern day Bible. Okay, and there's many different Bibles or religious texts or scriptures. The first one was the Latin Vulgate. Okay, and that if you go, I don't know much about Islam or Muslims, but a lot of the same stories happen and then they split off at a certain point. Okay, so just keep that in mind. One was in Latin, another one is in Arabic. Okay, but this is the Catholicism. This is Catholic clergy explaining it to you very clearly of what they worship. Okay, and this, when I read this, I was studying the Bible. I was going to River Valley Church every Sunday. I was very excited. Okay, to be a true believer. And when I read this, I was like, it all makes sense. Remember, what do they talk about Herod's temple, the 4 walls that surround you, the tetra? Okay, so let me read this. This is page 280 and 281. Okay. Lord of the fly, to the profane meant only the power that destroyed the swarms of flies when these became, as they often did in hot countries, a source of torment to the people whom they invaded. But this name, as identified with the serpent, clearly reveals itself as one of the distinctive names of Satan. And how appropriate is this name when its mystic or esoteric meaning is penetrated? What is the real meaning of this familiar name? Beelzebub, which is in the Bible, just means the restless Lord. Even that unhappy one who goeth to and fro in the earth and walketh up and down in it, who goeth through the dry places seeking rest and finding none. From all this, the inference is unavoidable that Satan, in his own proper name, must have been the great god of their secret and mysterious worship. And this accounts for the extraordinary mystery observed on the subject. When, therefore, Gratian abolished the legal provision for the support of the fire worship and serpent worship of Rome, we see how exactly the divine prediction was fulfilled. Revelations 12:9, the flaming dragon that comes out of the water. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Now, as the pagan pontifex, to whose powers and prerogatives the Pope had served himself heir, was thus the high priest of Satan. So, when the Pope entered into a league and alliance with that system of devil worship and consented to occupy the very position of that pontifex and to bring all its abominations into the church, as he has done, he necessarily became the prime minister of the devil and, of course, came as thoroughly under his power as ever the previous pontiff had been. How exact the fulfillment of the divine statement that the coming of the man of sin was to be after the working or energy of Satan. Here, then, is the grand conclusion to which we are all compelled, both on historical and scriptural grounds, to come. As the mystery of godliness is God manifest in the flesh, so the mystery of iniquity is, so far as much as such a thing is possible, the devil incarnate. Okay, so what he's saying there is the God in the Bible. Okay, and I'm assuming, because again, I'm not trying to, hey, Islam, don't come at me. They're both they all come when he goes through the history of what people worshipped all the way back into ancient Rome. It was always this evil serpent, fire dragon like deity, okay? And it was a man, right? So that's The Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop. I suggest you get a copy. I was a Christian my entire life. Until I read that, I was like, I want nothing to do with this anymore. And then I come to find out is a lot of this stuff where the more research you do on it, a lot of it is, especially the King James version, it's written by like people like Shakespeare, who wrote in verse and prose of the Bible. So you can't take it all at heart, okay? And then that's why the Bible is 66 books, because the devil or the Satan's favorite number. That's the reason why, okay? And then I came across this verse in the King James version. It was 2 Kings 6:29, okay? For we boiled my son and did eat him. I went, oh, what? I never knew that. Because when you read the Bible, right, when you're trying to read the whole thing, you kind of just go over it, right? So think of it as like a playwright to quell slave rebellions, for people to believe in. And it's stuff that, this is my belief. This is stuff you should never believe in. Okay? Fire worship, and, there's flying dragons out in Revelations. And then there's a lot of Christians, and I'm not trying to make fun of you, but you're hoping for this like end of times, end of days, Revelations type scenario. And then, well, what about your children? What about their future? You got to take them, you know what I mean? So again, Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop, Catholic clergy, literally stating who everybody worships is the devil and Satan, knowingly, like he says, or unknowingly. And that's the Pope's main job, is to get everybody to believe in it, right? Now just go look at the Vatican, okay? The Pope sits on this like $70 or $80 billion throne, okay? Because he's the prime minister of the devil himself. I mean, why do you need that? And then again, all these pastors and preachers that are way below the Catholic order, they actually believe that it's good, right? But the flip side of that coin is, okay, if you believe in all that stuff, why do you need money? Like if you believe in God and Jesus, right? Why do you need to take people's money to get them to believe in it? And for, because the tithing and like donations, it's all you're doing with that is you're giving a charitable donation to a nonprofit corporation. All churches, okay, unless you're the very highest order of the Catholic Church, they're all registered as nonprofits, charities. So when people give, their charitable donations, that's why it's a tax write-off, and that's why they don't have to pay taxes at churches. It's because they're nonprofit corporations. Okay, devil's in the details. And again, I see all these young kids wearing these crosses around and everything. Dude, and again, I never thought of it this way. You're celebrating violence and murder. Because again, the story of the cross, why it's so popular, is that's what Jesus was murdered on. That's what people murdered him on. You know what I mean? They murdered him on that. Threw, stones at him, spit on him, put a, crown, like a thorn crown on his head, nails in his hands. Like, do you celebrate that? That's what that represents is violence, okay? And basically, when you wear it, you can do whatever you want, as long as you ask for forgiveness, okay? And that is why so many pedophiles hide behind it, okay? You see it time and time again. That's why they hide behind it, because again, nobody's gonna suspect that when you grow up in this, new age of New Testament. If you wear the cross, you're like, you're in, So that's why a lot of pedophiles hide behind the cross. It's just to kind of protect themselves. Again, the cross is a symbol of violence. Like if Jesus came back and he saw you wearing a cross, he'd be like, right? That's when I finally figured out. I was like, dude, Jesus probably wouldn't be too happy with people like supporting the cross, because that was the number one form of punishment for murder and violence through the Dark Ages, allegedly, was a cross. Not just Jesus was murdered on it, but I mean, countless and countless. They said over 1 million people were murdered on a cross, hung just like Jesus. It wasn't just Jesus, okay? But they made the story of Jesus sound very convincing. Like he was rolled over. They hit him behind this big stone, right? And Jesus rolled it back magically, okay? And here's some other questions that I had. Once you read the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus turns 12 clay sparrows, like he made these toys, and he makes them fly away. Like, that's magic, right? I thought that was cool when I first read the Gospel of Thomas. And then he killed his teacher, and he killed his classmate. Because this is the part of the Catholic Church that they didn't want this to get in the New Testament for the people the good people to believe in. Because be like, well, that's murder, Jesus. He killed his teacher and his classmate. Okay. And then what would, if you saw somebody, turn 12 clay sparrows into real birds and they flew away, you'd be like, oh my gosh, this person is possessed. So think of it like that way. Like if you saw your friend do that and like, you'd be like, that's Harry Potter. Which my grandma, Gigi, love you, Gigi, she always said Harry Potter was witchcraft. Don't ever watch that stuff. Well, and again, you never think of it when you're raised in a society that's surrounded mostly around, okay, Christianity and the story of Jesus. Well, when you really think about all the stories of Jesus, that's no different than Harry Potter. And then I come to ask these questions. Well, when Jesus does go to the cross, I mean, he can turn, water into wine. Okay, which again, I had another question. Water is way better for you. Wine's terrible for you. It ages you much faster. Okay. And then he can feed many people with all these fish. Fish. And he can heal the blind. He can heal all these other people, right? He can heal all these sick people, paralyzed people, but he doesn't save himself from being murdered on a cross, just like the other millions of other people that were murdered on it. So that was another red flag about their story, that once you start really asking questions, which is an actual prayer, you're going to come to find out that it just doesn't add up. And it's not something that I would ever want my kids to learn about. I would never want them to sport the cross, number one, because it's a symbol of violence and murder and sacrifice, right? Jesus died for our sins. Well, we sacrificed this man for our story to move on, So once I started figuring this stuff out, I wanted my daughters away from a religion, because the story of John the Baptist, when you read about it, John the Baptist had his head cut off and handed to the rich nobility class on a silver platter. And that's what religion does to your children, okay? Once they believe in that stuff, the fairy tale stuff, it literally, their brain stops operating how it should. That's when you start to use only one half of one portion of your brain. And that's the symbolism of John the Baptist and the baptism, is once you fully believe in that, it's hard. It's like Pandora's box. The last thing left in Pandora's box is hope. You just hope it's all true, right? But that's the story of John the Baptist. Once you believe in that stuff, it's very hard to get your head back. And, not just like believe in everything that you're told. So it's handing your head to the rich nobility class on a silver platter once you believe in that stuff. And it's hard to come to, a lot of people, it's very hard to come to terms with this stuff. But I see right now we are living through a generation that we have the most religious youth in the history of the United States. Least amount of hard drug use, okay? Apparently vaping's up a lot. But other than that, That's very scary because all your kids are believing in the same thing, right? They're getting the same curriculum at their school. They're getting the same story taught to them about religion. And again, what's the number one thing when you pray, right? They always want you to, you need to forgive these people and move on. Well, that's how a lot of very bad stuff happens. When you blindly forgive people, trust me, I've tried it. It doesn't work. Okay? And you do not hold them accountable. Okay? You do not fool me once, shame on me. Sorry, fool me once, shame on you. But if you fool me a second time, that's my fault. Shame on me. Okay? Shout out to George Bush. That's hard to get down. Okay? It's confusing. But you should never be fooled by the same bad information or the same predator in your church, more than once. Okay? And then you go back to River Valley's history. This is my hometown church. I watched it grow from a gym. My dad and we all helped pastor. There was some high school or school we set up River Valley's service with in like this gymnasium, and I watched it grow all the way into this like massive super church. It's a mega church. Okay, now they had a pastor because again, people who want to prey on young children, they flock to these churches where there's youth. Because what's the number one thing when you become full-on Christian? You're set in this belief system. You have a blind trust for who you put your children around. Okay, and kind of that. This is God. This is Jesus. This is what we're supposed to be doing. Everybody else is doing it in this community. So you feel like you're doing the right thing, and you have this blind trust, which you should never have in this society. Okay. So River Valley had this pastor that was arrested for, having a relationship with a minor, a youth pastor. So again, if there's one of them there's many more. Okay. And it's sad to accept that. You don't want to believe it, right? Your mind's like, no, there's no way that there's more than one pastor. They handled that and they took care of it. No. The predators flock with each other around children. Trust me. Okay. So again, it's long talk here, but sometimes it's hard to accept these things, that we need to reevaluate what our kids are learning. And there's a certain point, there's a point of no return for a lot of people when it comes to this religious stuff. And it's something the universe does not allow. They do not allow lies out in the universe. So if you believe in all these lies and you believe that, you're going to be saved, by believing in this stuff, that's not the case. Okay. Love you. Have a great day.